I didn't know there was this many drunks in Atlanta. My name's Raymer. I'm a very grateful, recovered alcoholic. Man, it's like old home week. I know a bunch of y'all in here, and have met bunches of y'all around the countryside, and I think probably somebody must have told them we were doing this naked tonight to get this many people in here. Okay, all right, there you go. I promised my wife I'd stop doing that. I used to pull trowel, but she said that's a little much, so. My gosh. I'm delighted to get a chance to come back up here and do this. And y'all give me a couple of minutes to kind of settle down here and kind of get a focus. I know we've got some newcomers in here I had a chance to meet. This is kind of cool doing it this way because, usually it's afterwards everybody's in a hurry in the line and everybody gets impatient to leave. And I got a chance to really do some visiting with some of y'all before this. And it's so great to see what y'all have been doing. And a lot of guys staying sober. And what a cool thing. I know there's some new sober here, folks. Welcome. Geez, in this nest, if you can't get sober, you ain't gonna get sober here. I mean, this is about as pure a message as you're gonna hear, folks. I know a lot of these cats in this room, and I'm honored to be a part of this. I know we got some old geezers that have been around a long time, and I thank you for coming. I'm honored that you're here. I know we got some middle of the road buckaroos that don't read the big book and don't think the steps really mean much, and I've kind of got a skewed eye on this, and you're sure welcome. As always, you're not going to like this talk, and I know you're going to make it personal, and I sure don't want you to. Everybody wants to make it personal. Eating dinner with a lady at a talk I did not long ago up in Texas, and we've been waiting for since God was a little boy to get food, and I finally get food, and she's working her way around, and I can see her because she's on this side, She came around. She came around this side of the table, and I can see her, and somebody gets up, and she sits down, and I know it's I've done this. If I don't do anything stupid, guys, I'll have 21 years next month, and I've done this a while, and I didn't tell you that to impress you. It just impresses the hell out of me. So I just thought I'd hear it. Because I'm a cat that didn't think I could stay sober 30 days, and here I am. So we're going to cut to that chase here pretty quick. And the lady sits down and she says, "Well, I've listened to some of your CDs." Yes, okay. And I agree with most everything you say. Because I know that I just set the fork down because we're not going to get to eat, because what we're going to do is she's going to explain to me what she doesn't agree with what I'm saying. We got to cut to the chase here, folks. You don't have to agree with anything I say. Welcome. That's one of the coolest things about Alcoholics Anonymous, folks, and there's nobody going to tell you how to do this. If middle of the road is working for you and meeting makers make it, and you're going to meetings and you like this and you like that, that's fine. But I'm up here not to share your experience. I'm up here to share my experience. My experience is like so many of y'all, and so many of y'all, we don't have the same experience, and it's just okay. Next week, you can come up here and you can do your story, and that'll be fine too. And, I give you the E for effort, and we just go on. Because I'm not trying to sell you anything. Alcoholics Anonymous is a cool program that a couple of guys came up with that couldn't stay sober. And they came up with some pretty rigid idea here. It's like, we can't do this ourselves. We need a thing called a spiritual experience. And it seems like we've spent the last 70 years trying to get as far away from that message as we can possibly get. I was 7 years in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous trying to get well. And that's my experience. People want to take exception with that. I don't understand that. That's just my experience. You just didn't want it. Why is it always back on the newcomer when they relapse? Maybe the newcomer walked in the door and never heard anything but keep coming back. Because if that's all they heard and they got drunk, whose fault is that? You follow? I had a friend up north that says it best. He says, if alcohol's your problem, then detox is as hard as it's going to get, which is pretty hard. If alcoholism's your problem, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's fixing. Because what nobody seems to want to talk about is this internal thing called untreated alcoholism. Everybody thinks that this is the problem. Booze. Alcohol's the problem. Alcohol's not the problem. I've stopped drinking 1,000 times. I can stop on a dime. That's not the problem. The problem is staying stopped. You with us? The further away I get from the drink, the worse I get. My internal condition comes unglued at the seams. I stay sober just long enough to build up everything back, get a little money in the checking account, get the car washed, wife comes back, you'll follow, get back in the big house, everything's going good, you know. Everybody's patting you on the back. Oh, this sobriety is wonderful for you. You're looking so well, you know. And then 3-4 weeks in, I start to hear the little the little voice, you know, the little conversation in the head, you know. You need a Lanesta. That's with me back then it was you need a joint, you know, you need something like that because I'm not going to drink anymore, but I can still smoke pot. I mean, all them guys at the AA clubs do it. Up in North Texas where I got sober, I mean, you could 8 o'clock the doors would open up and all the blue smoke pulls out, you know, and everybody walks in, pick up their chip. Well, only reason to come to AA is a desire not to drink, but I'm on the marijuana maintenance program and I can do it. And now today it's all about pills. I don't know if anybody smokes pot anymore, but today they eat pills by the handful. Now it's all pills. It's all medication. It just freaks me out. So I work for a treatment center. I work for a hospital up in Hunt, Texas. I've been there for about 15 years, and I get to see from this perspective. Some of these people say, well, how do you stay so passionate about this? Buddy, I watch people die every week from this disease. I mean, I am. Any of us around this industry, those of you that sponsor a lot of people and go back into these halfway houses and treatment centers, we get to watch a lot of people croak. Alcoholism and drug addiction is fatal, folks. Now here's the grinder, and I'm gonna try to steer clear of some of this stuff because I really made some good friends earlier, and I want to keep those friends. I always seem to manage to hit, you know, a nerve with you, and I don't want to do that. But Alcoholics Anonymous is chock-a-block full. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, but I'm going to remind you, you made me do it. Alcoholics Anonymous is chock-a-block full of hard drinkers who don't even need to be here. Bill Wilson, over and over in the book, refers to the real alcoholic. But what about the real alcoholic? We talk about that in meetings, and people get upset, people get grindy and grind their teeth. I'm an alcoholic if I say I'm an alcoholic. No, you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous if you say you're a member. In order to be an alcoholic, my book says you have to have certain symptoms. I'm not knocking the hard drinkers. You're sure welcome. Welcome. Just don't sponsor anybody. Try not to talk very much. I was down in the, some of us were talking before. I was down in the valley not long ago doing a talk, and this lady comes up after, and she's just livid with me. She's just pissed, and I can see that she's mad. And I'm trying to, you know, and she's part of my miracle, my story. When I tried to commit suicide in early 1987, and it's when I finally got sober. And after I got sober, on into my sobriety, about 6-9 months, I was able, with a doctor's care, to get off all the medication that the doctors had me on. I'd been seeing psychiatrists for years, folks. Every time, you know, it's time to get sober again, I go to another doctor, and they give me another pill. Chris, you're not an alcoholic, you're manic depressive. I see there? I told you. I'm medicating with alcohol. I was medicating alcoholism, but to cut to that. But anyway, I'm taking another pill, and I'm taking 7 pills a day, and anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants by the handfuls, and some adult attention deficit disorder. There's one really pretty blue one. I don't ever knew what that was, but I took it a lot. And no, it wasn't that little blue one either. I never had to take that. I never had to take that one, but God wouldn't make me ugly and impotent, guys. Come on. I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, this lady comes up after and she says, you're taking a chance talking about that from the podium because there's people that need these medications. And I said, buddy, I didn't say that you need to stop taking these medications. I'm not a doctor. Bob, just whatever you want to do. And she said, well, I had trouble sleeping and that's why I drank. And she caught me in mid-guard. I was turning around like that. And I said, excuse me? She says, I was having trouble sleeping and that's why I drank. So what'd you do? I went to a doctor and he gave me some sleep medication. I haven't had a drink since. All in favor, say aye. Rock on. No kidding. She said, yeah, and I'm 13 years sober. So's the cat. She didn't have to work the steps. She didn't have to do anything. Can you imagine the women that she sponsors? What's the first thing she's going to tell them? Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. I've got the best doctor. I bet you're having trouble sleeping, aren't you? I got that taken care of. Oh my gosh. Guys, if you can stop taking a pill, then take the pill for heaven's sakes. I don't know what to tell you. If good therapy will fix you, rock on. If just going to a meeting treats your alcoholism, how cool is that? But we've got to start thinking about the little newcomer that's walking in the back door that's the real McCoy. Y'all with us? The real cat that cannot not drink. That's the reason that Alcoholics Anonymous was given to us. This fatal progressive illness has a solution. And we absolutely must feel the responsibility to carry that solution back. And I got to tell you, folks, I know this. Even in a room like this with all the thumpers that I've met in this room, there's a bunch of us in this room right now that do not know the solution to alcoholism. You're still going to these meetings where you believe that just going to meetings and palling around with another alcoholic will get you sober. And it won't. It won't. Any more than me going to the gym and sitting in the lobby, well, never mind. My experience is that I got sober by working the steps quickly, rapidly, the way the steps were intended to be worked, not take your time. I come from a treatment center where we want to kill people with this idea, you didn't get sick overnight, you're not going to get well overnight. What's the race? Let me tell you what the race is, honey. The race is that if I drink again, I'm going to kill somebody, probably myself. There is a race here. It's progressive in nature. It's genetic. Folks, when are we going to stop arguing about this? The jury's in. 7 years ago, you might have been able to argue this. Alcoholics are not, you're born that way. At conception, alcoholism, you've been given that genetic predisposition. Folks, that's just documented. There's been too much study around it. You want to continue to blame something that happened to you for your alcoholism? I'm going to be the first one to hug your neck and say that bad thing exacerbated the hell out of it and probably speeded the process up. But it didn't cause it. If it did, you're not one of us. Over the years, what's happened is that treatment centers have removed the urgency to finish this work. And the sad part is, over a period of time, Alcoholics Anonymous got comfortable with the idea of letting the treatment centers dictate what was appropriate and what was not appropriate. If you ask the old geezers that were here before us, they all worked the steps quick. You read the archival material, Bill Wilson worked the steps in 9 days, for heaven's sakes. He was making his amends from Towns Hospital. He was there twice before and went AMA both times. The third time he came back and did the old C word, the commit word. He's like, I'm going to stick this out. Hallelujah. That's what God wants, I think, a little commitment. How's that? He commits and he's doing the work with Ebby from Towns Hospital and he's working on his amends when he has his barn-burning spiritual experience. Dr. Bob, a little less than 2 weeks after his last drunk, he's finished his amends. He's working with others, pronto. These first cats all worked the steps quickly and then turned around and did what we were supposed to do, what we just read, work with others. And then we've got the absolute arrogance to come into our meetings and look the other way while somebody sits in our room for 6 months and just discusses maybe someday doing a 4-step. Y'all follow what I'm saying? Up in Bill's story, there's a, you know the little tombstone deal? We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. I was there. I participated in the first Cocaine Anonymous meeting in Winchester Cathedral a few years back, and I got to see this tombstone that's there that book talks about. It's pretty cool. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth of musket or by pot. Ominous warnings, which I failed to heed. Man, I didn't heed the ominous warnings any more than Bill Wilson did. Y'all follow? Oh my gosh, what a disaster. I was 17 when I had my first drink of Boone's Farm apple wine, and yeah, pretty good, huh? All that means we have a lot of old people in this room when you get that kind of response. Oh, but I still remember it vividly, and it's like I remember the first time I drank it, and I remember what it did. It's the same as every speaker that's ever said, and it changed who I was. It altered my perception of everything that was going around me, and that was just a fact. And I remember walking back over to my house up on Goat Creek Road in Kerrville, Texas. Oh my gosh, how country can you get? In a big old full moon, and for the first time I realized I could sense myself breathing deeper. Everything was going to be okay, you know, and I wasn't drunk. I was right. Guys, I was an alcoholic. I needed booze. Thank God there was that for me to give me the relief that I needed. And I don't. People that don't understand alcoholism don't understand that. Well, why did you keep drinking? What was going on in your family? Nothing. The problem was not with my family. The problem was with me. I was uncomfortable. The thing that we don't talk about enough, I was talking to a couple of people earlier, is this thing called a spiritual malady, this internal condition. Guys, when I don't drink, I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. Just nod your head if you understand that. When you're not drinking or drugging, irritable, restless, and discontent. How about bored? Book talks about. How about depressed? Number one symptom of alcoholism and drug addiction is depression. Do you know what the largest prescribed medication on the face of the earth is now? Antidepressants. What is wrong with us? 227 million prescriptions of antidepressant last year. Spiritual malady, internal, anxiety, tension, low self-esteem, feeling of uselessness. Y'all follow? All of this stuff is what's percolating inside me. I take the booze, that's treated. That's what alcoholism is. Normal people, it doesn't treat. They get euphoric, they drink too much, they puke, they say, I'm not going to do that again, and they go on to something else. They get married, they get a new job, whatever. We just keep going back to the same old deal. Golly, drives me nuts. I was in Houston for a long time. I was nearly a year living here in Atlanta. I worked at Omni International Hotel. I was one of the commies that opened it up, and oh my gosh, I nearly died here in Atlanta. It was one of the saddest periods of my life, living in a beautiful city like this, and my alcoholism was raging. I was in my early 20s, and I was so alone here. I had plenty of friends and buds, you know, but I used to sit at one of these parks out here. Couldn't even tell you where it was. I had a little busted up Toyota, and I'd sit there and drink Tuborg Gold beer and just cry, watch the families, and just miserable inside. Y'all understand? Nothing going on. I had the job of my dream at this hotel. Plenty of money, nice house, no problem, just alone. I was too afraid to talk to anybody. My shyness was kicking my butt. I felt out of place. I didn't even have a date for a year. I mean, this is messed up, I tell you. And I like to drink myself to death. Went back to Texas. Eventually, I got married. I was 30 years old, and it was time to set down some roots, and I was in the food business, and I went out in the parking lot one night and told God if he would let this cocktail waitress marry me, that everything would be okay, and that would be... Listen, don't laugh. Some of y'all in here have married for a lot weaker stuff than that. So, and that's the joke with us. And I'm married, and I'm really disappointed 2 weeks later, you know, and I haven't even taken the rental stuff back yet. I'm watching her shovel those Cheerios in her mouth. I'm saying, God, if you could just kill this woman, everything would be okay. Y'all have heard me say that 1,000 times, and I can't get well, you know. We did some geographicals moving, and she was a nice girl, guys. There's nothing wrong with this lady. She was as sweet as could be. But something's got to fix this internal condition. I don't know. And I'm seeing therapists and counselors, and the therapists and counselors are asking me what's going on. And I start the treatment stuff. And anyway, trying to save this marriage, I ended up going back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went the first time in early 80s and went into meetings like we were just reading about. And guys, I can't knock those meetings. If people are staying sober in those, who am I to say that they're goofy? Open discussion meetings, but they didn't help me. And the war stories is what chased me out of the open discussion meetings. It wasn't so much listen to you talk about your weed eater, because I find that kind of fascinating. You losers! But the war stories put me off, and I hear people, guys, come into our hospital every week tell me the same thing. They look up on the walls and they see that our hospital is based around the 12 steps, and they're just chest falling. You know, oh my gosh, we're more AA. This didn't work for me. Why? I'm going to sit in a room and listen to people talk about their wars. You follow? What we've done is we've taken this war story business out of context. War stories are so important, it's not even funny. In a 12-step call, you better have a war story. Y'all follow? Because it's indispensable. Nobody's going to listen to you unless you've got a history. That's just the way it works. That's why people in the industry that are alcoholics and addicts have a better chance with the patients than sometimes the people that are not. And I'm not knocking that. The identification piece is so important. But in a meeting, Jesus, why do we have to do this? I'm sitting in there listening to everybody talk about, especially the poor women. I just bleed for them. And the young adults that come in and screw up their courage at 18 years old to walk into an AA meeting, and then we try to scare them out by telling them how many DWIs we've had. Guys, we got to stop this. Now, I'm going to try to do this without speaking in tongues. Because I have flopped over several times doing this. We've got to stop trying to scare people into recovery. We've got to stop doing this. There's no place in the book where it says, tell your story to get them to stay. If they're out there on the park bench and you want to get them in here, you better tell them a few stories. But once we get them in here, why don't we talk about the power of God and our lives that have changed as a result of working some steps? Why don't we pull them with a vision? And I've been in some nice audiences like this, and we always applaud it. And we go back into our meetings and we listen to it again, ad nauseum. Instead of changing the formats, we tell them in our formats and up in the hill country at the old outpost, we tell them point blank, we're not here as a dumping ground for your problems. Please feel free to come before or after if you just want to talk. But during the meeting, we're going to be focused on the literature we just read. We go to study the book, just like you guys do at your home group. Make sense? Everybody should be blessed with that. Well, here's the old geezers that come up after, the little hard drinkers. But the newcomer needs a place to share. Of course they do. Listen, guys, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. A little newcomer staggers into our little meeting and sits down like a deer in a headlight, and he starts off on some tangent. Nobody's going to eat him. We're going to love him. We're going to talk to him. And after the meeting, though, we're going to kind of guide him and tell him, this is our meeting, this is kind of how we do, and we're going to teach him what to do. Y'all follow? But we're not going to let him come back again and do it another time. We're going to draw the line in the sand someplace because we got to have a place to go get sober too. We're going to go before the meeting and after the meeting and talk about the kids and the money and the lawyers and the DWI and the court case. But we're not going to sit in a meeting and talk about that. Shame on us. We don't have to do that. The book says that we're supposed to let these little new guys and understand that the dependence comes on God. God. Let's get this clear. AA is not a self-help program. Alcoholics Anonymous, these 12 steps don't get Chris Raymer sober. It's not going to get Larry Scott sober. The steps get us connected spiritually, and God gets us sober. When are we going to stop representing this as a self-help program? It's not. It's a spiritual program of action. I thought this was a current thing in the last 20 years or so since I'd been sober. You know, we had this big influx of cats that coming out of treatment in the 70s and 80s when the insurance company started paying like slot machines. We could talk 2 hours about that. Hey, y'all watch and see what's fixing to happen. You know that big old fat tax bill that got passed last Friday? Guess what was stuck down in all that pork? Way down in that last $130 billion worth of pork? Way down in there. There was an insurance parity bill that we've been trying to push through the government for years, and it passed. Now, we may not have a country to use it in. But if we survive this mess, we're going to see a lot of insurance companies get back on that bandwagon again. And we're going to see, I'm telling you folks, we're going to see an influx of people having the money to come back into treatment. And whether they go to a good treatment center or a bad treatment center is beside the point. They're going to squirt out the butt end coming straight to us. And if we're here to catch them, they'll stay sober. That makes sense? Yeah. I want to read something to you. I picked up this archival stuff. I was reading about the history of AA in Texas. It was pretty good. There was a cat who was writing a letter to Ruth Hawk, a guy named Larry Jewell, and he wrote this letter in 1940. Now, you remember when the Big Book was published, right? 1939. So a year after the Big Book was published, he's writing letters back and forth between New York. He's in Houston, Texas now. Listen to what he says. I stuck to the principle that this is strictly a spiritual business and did so against great odds, even to the extent of telling those who were inclined to diminish the importance of that principle that our group was not for them. Though they were welcome as friends, we mean business. We weren't in this thing for fun. Come on. This was one alcoholic in the state of Texas trying to hold a group together, the first group in AA in Texas, in Houston. He was a newspaperman, and he wrote a series of articles, and he produced a little booklet, and it was as rigid as anything you'd want to read. It was work the steps, find God, go find a drunk. To help. Make sense? God, why can't we get back to that simple message? Why does this have to be so freaking complicated? I don't care how you work the steps. I just don't. I'm tired of people splitting hairs about that. I don't care how you work the steps. Just work them quickly. I got drunk because I did a 3-column inventory instead of a 5-column inventory. My sponsor said I didn't get on my knees when I prayed, and that's why I got drunk. No, you got drunk because you didn't finish all the work and go work with another drunk. You give it away, you get to keep it. Guys, the 12 Steps was first century Christianity. That's exactly what it was about. All spiritual doctrines that I've ever studied has got the same thing. You can't keep it. You can't hoard it. You've got to turn around and give it away. That was the beauty of this program. Everybody can do it. You don't have to go get an education to do that. You've got your experience. You know how to puke straight up. Check. If you've had good sponsorship, you know how to work the 12 steps, so you can turn around and show somebody else how to do it. Hey, and it's the coolest to watch. See, y'all are sitting in here smiling. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I get tired of listening to you whine about your problems, and I get tired of you telling your war stories, and I couldn't relate to any of those because I hadn't had half the problems you had had. I was a little smarter than most of you, to be honest with you. And God made up for the ugliness. He gave me some pretty... I just dodged a lot of bullets that y'all caught, and I didn't have a lot to share in those meetings along those lines. But I couldn't understand why I felt so bad when I quit drinking, and I always found an excuse to go back to it. And wife eventually left, and I had 5 more years left in me. Eventually got a DWI. Yeehaw, that was an experience. And 1987, I'm working for my twin brother up in North Texas, Myers. A lot of y'all know him, and he is the true evil twin. I'm so tired of catching bad PR. I haven't cussed from the podium in years, and I still get the bad rap. I don't understand it. I'm good. If it hadn't been for brothers, we got family in here too. I'm just telling you, if it hadn't been for families, I'd have been on the street. I don't know if I would have made it or not. They co-signed a little note for me so I could get a little apartment, and but I drove home one cold night in November and picked up a stack of return checks and went to my little apartment, and a couple of ferrets sitting in there, and nothing else. All my furniture is gone. Y'all can imagine that apartment, can't you? Guys don't clean toilets very well, and there's 2 ferrets in that apartment. It was not pretty. And I opened the return checks and I was just disgusted and I'm done. I don't know. Guys, I wish I do so well in certain areas of my life explaining myself, and I just can't explain the last days of that. The big book talks about it in the doctor's opinion. They give a pretty good idea, and over in A Vision for You, they talk about it. You're going to know loneliness like few do. And I'm sitting in that apartment, folks, and I've got a family that loves me to death, and I can't make them understand because I can't explain to them. There's no reason that I'm drinking. But some of us wear the little issue man pins, and it's like I've dealt with all of the issues, and I can't not drink. Some of you guys, you can't stay sober because you still believe your drinking's connected to the ex-wife or to the divorce or the grief. It's not. It's exacerbated, and it needs to be dealt with. I'm not making light. Bless your heart. Let me hug your neck. But please, let's put the focus where it needs to be. I'm disconnected spiritually, and I need to get connected spiritually. And that's just the bottom line. And there's some people that grind their teeth about that, and I don't give a rat's butt. I don't. What are we going to do? We're going to change the message that saved millions of our lives because it bothers somebody? Shame on us. God, the program is so open and roomy. You can pray to whatever you want, but you're going to pray to something. Goodness. I got up from the medicine cabinet, got a couple bottles of pills, and made a conscious decision, pronto, to take my life. I was impaired. I was certainly not drunk, but I'd been drinking. And I took the pills and swallowed them down and sat on the side of the bed. And instantly I heard a voice that said, Chris, don't do this. Go back to AA. I get emails from all over the world. People get these CDs. They say, did you really hear a voice? No, I'm just making this stuff up. You know, I don't know. I heard it 3 times that night. Don't do this, go back to AA. It creeped me out. There was nothing in that apartment. It wasn't in my head a thought like, you can have a Lunesta. That's a thought. This was a voice. This was a voice. Don't do this, go back to AA. And I did. And I made myself sick, and I laid down on the side of the bed and conked out. And I heard the voice. When I woke up in the morning, I came to, and I heard it one last time. This, go back to AA. And I said, okay. I cleaned up and I found a doctor and got some doggy downers and went to work. And at 6 o'clock, I went to a meeting. 3 years before, this guy had 12-stepped me. I'd called him. It was the first time I'd ever had a blackout. And I called this guy, and I said, come get me, because I was off on another side of town. I didn't know how I got over there, and it scared the bejesus out of it. Guys, I'd passed out 1,000 times. Y'all know that, but I always wake up in my little under the bed or somewhere in my house, you know. But I was clear across town. I had no idea where I was and what I was doing over there. And I came to, and I don't know who I killed or what I did. Those of you that have done it, it's a scary place to be. And I called him, and he took me straight to a meeting in Louisville, Texas. And he said, come on in. He says, a meeting's starting in 10 minutes. And I said, Charlie, I can't do it. I just can't go back in there. Why? Because I'd had 7 years of listening to you do what you do. I'm sorry. I hear it every day. And I left. Well, anyway, I'm ready to go to a meeting now, 3 years later, and I'm too late to go to my meeting where I used to go, and so now I'm going to go to this meeting. Charlie said, well, Chris, if you ever want to go to this meeting, though, but don't go to this meeting if you don't want to get sober, because these guys in here mean business. And I walked in the back door, and sure enough, it's like they were all carrying big books. You know, we walked in tonight with a big book under his arm. It's like, yeah, that's what they did. And I walked in, and the little cats were all carrying big books. That was back in the day you could smoke, and they all had 6, 7 cigarettes out of their mouths and they were fucking smoking. Us smokers, we ruined it for everybody back then. If we'd all smoked one cigarette, we'd have been okay. But anyway, some of y'all have heard me talk about this before. And they all got up next to me, and the little old girl got between me and the door, and I couldn't squeeze out past her. And, you know, I've talked about it 1,000 times. God works in mysterious ways. If one of you old hairy-legged boys had got up there and got between me and the door, I'd have whooped your butt. Because I walked in and you guys were laughing and joking and smiling, and I was feeling really self-conscious, and it's the old, is my patch crooked, is my zipper, because I knew you were laughing at me. It's all paranoid, and it's like, and this little girl sat between me and got my belt loop and sat me down in a chair and said, sit down, Chris. She said, sit down, cowboy, and I sat me down, and I'm like a deer in a headlight, like, what's this, And I know we have women's meetings and men's meetings, but if this little girl had been off in a young adult meeting, I'd have been dead. She wasn't. She was in mainstream AA, and it wasn't men work with men and women work with women. This was a recovered alcoholic that was reaching out to help another recovered alcoholic, and it didn't make any difference what the attachments looked like, truly. She's still sober today. And she sat down, got me a cup of coffee, and watched me shake because I'm coming unglued in these meetings. Again, treatment centers took this out of our presence. We didn't get to watch people detox so much anymore. And I was like a bug, and everybody was watching. Look at that guy over there. You know, he's fixing to seize. And I didn't let him down too much. I guarantee you, I don't know how many times you can knock a cup of coffee over in a meeting and not be asked to leave, but I kept knocking stuff over, and they went around the room and they shared miracles. Y'all have heard me talk about this, guys. The chairperson took charge of the meeting and says, buddy, we got a newcomer in here, and he's coming apart. Let's share some hope with this cat. I mean, how did he know that that's what I needed, was hope? Because I didn't need one more stupid war story, and you don't have to talk to me about your drinking because I know how to drink. And that's what Dr. Bob kept talking over and over about. We need to stop talking about the drinking. We need to stop talking about all of that. We need to start talking about the solution. And they did. They went around and talked about the miracles. You'll take me out of context. I'm going to repeat myself. In a 12-step call, you better be armed with some stories about yourself. But in a meeting, quit. If you find yourself turning your chair and looking at a young adult and saying, you don't want to end up like me, do you? Stop yourself, because you're making a complete and total ass of yourself. And the people that are laughing at you. Trust me. Stop it. Come on, guys. Nobody believes that they're ever going to do this goofy stuff we did. You don't believe it until you do it. If somebody looked at me and said, you don't want to eat out of dumpsters, do you? Me? I ended up eating out of dumpsters, but I didn't remember him eating out of dumpsters when I did it. You got the point. They're going around the tables and they're talking about the cool things they're doing, guys, about artwork they're doing and jobs and having good relationships and buying cars and investments and all the cool stuff that just passed me by. You know, a guy flipped a credit card out. I'll never forget it. Flipped a credit card out and says, look what I just got back, you know, and he had a little credit card on him. And I just like, God dang, I haven't seen one of those in years. Y'all follow? No, the credit card company got theirs back. At the end of a meeting, the old geezer came up and says, do you want some of this? And I said, yeah, I think I do. He said, are you ready to do this for keeps? And after some discussion about one day at a time and what that meant, we live life one day at a time. We don't stay sober one day at a time. I know what subsequent AA literature talks about. No wonder some of you newcomers stay so confused. You pick up a big book and read it, and then pick up a piece of trash called Living Sober that AA produces, you'll be so confused you won't be able to see straight. We live life one day at a time, guys. And the old timer says, one day at a time, we're going to show you how to do this. We're going to show you. You don't wake up every day and decide if you're going to stay sober or not. But it starts with a commitment. Commit. You keep leaving the door cracked. I commit. I want to stay sober unless she doesn't come back, unless I don't get the job, unless I don't get the money, unless the loan doesn't go through, no. Commit. I know you don't have the power to do it on your own. We're gonna help you. We're gonna show you how to get connected to some power so that the obsession to drink goes away. I got people sitting in my AA meetings today, years sober, still wanting to drink. What a tragedy. Doesn't have to be that way. And if it's happening to you, talk to me after the meeting and I'll show you how to get hooked up. Because recovered alcoholic means that you are not fighting this on a daily basis. And if you are, we just need to help you get well. Cool? Yeah, amen is right. Afterwards, yeah. The old geezer explained to me that nothing comes from without sacrifice. Do y'all understand that? Everything that we've ever wanted, it took effort on our part. Raising families, going to school, getting that job, doing everything that we ever did took effort. And yet we come into Alcoholics Anonymous and some idiot, some well-meaning idiot says, welcome, keep coming back. And that's all we hear. Well, I appreciate that. But you're misleading the newcomer. You're indicating that if I will just keep coming back, I'll get well. But that's why we see so many people go back out the door. That's why our success rates continue to go through the toilet, because we don't tell them how to get well. What if we told this cat how we got well and he says, I'm not interested in doing that. And then he left. That's his privilege. Rock on. How cool is that? Go try some more And then when you come back, we'll have the same message for you. But that's the way it should be. But we've got this, treat this like we're trying to sell them aluminum siding. Go in with the easy sell. Don't scare them off. Don't do this. Don't do that. We only have one. Oh. You know what I'm saying? Here's what happens. They come up after the meetings. Well, if somebody had talked that rough to me, I never would have gotten sober. How many people with a watered down message have we killed by not cutting to the chase and telling them what they're buying at the very beginning? How many people have we killed? If you don't want what we have, go someplace else, because the steps are pretty implicit. If you want what we have and are willing to go to any length, then you're ready to take certain steps. Guy comes in and says, I want to get sober. Okay, well, let's start working the steps. I can get you Saturday in the morning, get you to step 3, and then we'll start working on the 4th step. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to go that fast. Well, bon appetit. Go get a drink. No, but it's everybody walking on eggshells around alcoholics because we're afraid we're going to hurt their feelings. And it's like sponsorship. How do you learn how to do it? You just get in the middle of this. And that's how we do it. But there's a window of opportunity. We talked about it last time I was here in Atlanta. And it's like you'll come in and you with a zeal. You know, I want to get sober. I want to get sober. And you got a big head of willpower behind you, and you're ready to go. Okay. And so you come in and you start doing the work, and then you get this little thing called God's grace. The old idiots that left treatment call it a pink cloud. I'm going to say this real quick. It becomes quite personal with me when you start calling it that, because there's no such thing as a pink cloud. It's called God's grace. It's an absolute... And we have a tendency to want to make fun of those people. We sit in the meetings and laugh about it. It's like, do you remember how bad you suffered before? I'm in a cold apartment in Dallas, Texas, Lewisville, Texas, trying to commit suicide. Some of y'all have been there. You've done that. You know what that's like. I have a great family, and I'm ready to drop everything down the toilet because I cannot stand the way I feel. And now all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, the obsession's gone, and I feel terrific. And I see a horizon that I've never seen before. And some idiot in the back has a tendency to want to take a shot at me and make fun because I'm excited about recovery. And they still do it to a bunch of us in this room here today. You come in excited and laughing, and somebody will take a shot at you. Is it any wonder that nobody wants to stay around the fellowship? I'm going to tell you something, buddies. I'll get all lathered up here. I apologize. Go on there. No. You don't want me lathered up. I took a hand of Valium back there earlier. I mean, this is normal for me. You want to look at the shots. Turn on the TV and look at the jokes that people make about Alcoholics Anonymous. Look where Hollywood has taken our fellowship. Look where the press takes us. Go on the internet and find about 100 sites that'll take our inventory. And every time they're taking our inventory, they're talking about stuff that has been misrepresented from the beginning. My one bone to pick with Alcoholics Anonymous is that they've allowed them to do that. In a fellowship that says it takes forever to recover, we just didn't believe. They've written books about how to get well quick because AA takes forever. You know, our book didn't say that. But that's the premise that's out there. Y'all understand it? We need to stop, folks. We need to take the fellowships back. We need to start talking about the literature, the promises that were given to us. I'm a recovered alcoholic. The absolute arrogance for anybody to continue after they've been in this fellowship for a period of time to introduce themselves as a recovering alcoholic takes my breath away. No. You haven't wanted a drink in 10 years, and you think in some guise of humility, you're going to come up here and introduce yourself as somebody who's still sick, and you wonder why people take shots at us. Is this for keeps or not? Bill Wilson, in the archives that I was just reading this week, he talked over and over. Clear up until the day he died in 1971, he started talking every time about being a recovered alcoholic. On the title page, it says we recovered. And the treatment center's got hold of it and says we're always going to be sick. Listen, I came back the next day because the guy drugged me back, and we got on our knees in the back room after they qualified me, and they made sure that I had the physical allergy. They talked to me about the first 23 pages, and then we went to 23 to 43. We didn't read it because I was detoxing. He cherry-picked it, and he talked to me about the phenomenon of craving, and then he talked about this thing called choice. Do you have a choice whether you're going to drink, Chris? Are you really powerless? And he asked me some questions, and I said, yes. When the stuff is not in my system, I don't have the power to not go back to it. He said, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And we went in the back room and we got on our knees. He said, you don't have a problem with God, do you? And I said, absolutely not. And I said, let's go. And we did a 3rd step prayer. Everybody says, that's too fast. Early guys did it that fast. Guys, y'all understand I'm dying. And if I don't get some relief pretty quick, let's go. We got on our knees and did a 3rd step prayer, went and got some food, came back, and he threw me a notebook, and he said, Chris, let's start working on a 4th step. Now, remember, I'd been in AA for 7 years. I knew what this was about. You say 4th step in the meetings I go to, and everybody just groans. Oh, no, this is They make it, because treatment centers have turned it into this big therapeutic exercise. It's an inventory, folks. You ought to be able to do it on the back of a sheet of paper like that. It's quick and fast, the way the book has outlined it. I didn't do the whole thing that afternoon. I went home. He said, Chris, you don't have to do the whole thing. I'm going to walk you through it. Are you pissed at anybody? Well, a few. Why don't you jot their names down? You're not going to be doing nothing but shaking anyway this afternoon. Go on, boy. 2 weeks later, I've got a completed 4th step. I'm ready to do a 5th step, ready to dump a 5th step. And I'm sitting on the tailgate of my truck up in North Texas in the same parking lot where I tried to commit suicide 2 weeks earlier. And I'd look up at that big old full moon, and it dawns on me that the obsession to drink has lifted. And I'm surrounded by liquor stores and drugs, and it's Friday and nobody in my apartment but those 2 ferrets still, and I don't want to drink. And I'm done. And I'm not afraid I'm going to drink. I'm just done. The obsession's been removed. And I'm not going to second guess it. That was 21 years ago, folks. And not once have I obsessed about alcohol because I stay connected. I sat there with tears in my eyes and felt the presence of God for the first time in my adult life. And I knew what it was about because the old timers at that group loved me enough to tell me the truth. And they told me that I was a soldier in the trench with them and that I had a job and that I was not the most important person there and welcome back. And they said, you, kitchen, cups. Everybody laughs. But that's the deal. You find a job in Alcoholics Anonymous and you'll stay. You understand that? The people that made... The people that made the coffee tonight and set this conference up are not going to get drunk tonight. They're just not. You find a job, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and so that's the deal. In our accountability groups today, sober, 21 years down the road, lots of good things have happened to me, lots of bad things have happened, but I've managed to stay sober through all of that, through thick and thin, because the obsession's been God. God's grace falls evenly on everybody, and this is like a long-time thing, guys. This is what we do, as long as we stay active. One of the things that we're starting to see at the treatment center where I work is a lot of old-time sobriety coming back. People with 7 years, 10 years, 21 years who have lost their sobriety because they pulled away from the fellowship. You talk to them and say, buddy, what happened? I got bored with AA. And I just went, what do you mean you got bored with AA? Let me ask you a question. How many people were you sponsoring? None. That's why you got bored with AA. You think we continue to come after all these years to hear something witty out of your mouth? Something witty out of our mouths? Buddy, we're here to find the newcomer. I'm going to tell you something. I'm in this afternoon back at the hotel, called a guy at work. I got a message at work. This guy, he's holed up in a hotel in Austin, Texas, with a bottle of pills and some scotch. And so I called the guy back, and he said, Chris, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called you. I'm not going to commit suicide, but I'm just freaked out. This is my third treatment, and I can't do this again. I said, you don't have to, buddy. And I talked to him, and I didn't talk to him like a little retarded child either. I dug down. I said, I need to tell you, I told him how the cow ate the cabbage. You selfish. And by the end of the conversation, which was short and sweet, pretty one-sided on my part, he was laughing and I was laughing. He did the same thing that the old geezer did for me that night. He said, I'm not going to put up with any of this victim stuff, and we're not going to listen to any of these self-pity stuff. We need to understand what we're trying to do here. Guys, let me ask you a question. Do you understand how many people you're going to affect? Everybody in treatment comes to treatment, and all we do is tell you how many people you've harmed. Make a list of the people you've harmed. Make a list of all the damage you've done. Hey, let me bring something to your attention. You walk out of treatment or you come out of that AA meeting and you're not drinking and drugging, you're not doing anything. Now start right now, click. How many people's lives are you going to affect simply because you're not drinking and drugging anymore? How many of your kids are going to be unbelievably changed simply because you're not suffering from the ravages of alcoholism and drug addiction anymore? How cool is that? Your job now, because God has removed the obsession to drink, is to get your butt back in the trench and help us carry the message of hope to the newcomer. Real quick, because I got to go, because I see some of the old geezers getting up and go to the bathroom. They got an hour in them. You can always tell, you know. Years ago, I used to be a competitive cyclist. I was not a really piss-poor competitive cyclist at that. I'm just poor genes. I loved cycling, and they said I had the right butt for it, but I had crappy lungs, so I don't know what to tell you. We trained a lot, and I rode with a bunch of hammerheads, and at a certain point, everybody eventually, if you're in cycling, you will ride a century. You'll ride 100 miles. And I got with a bunch of guys, and we talked about it, and said, this is the date we're going to do it. And we planned for it. There's a cold front coming, so we brought some cold weather gear. And so we set out. There was about 15 of us, and we set out on this 100-mile ride up in the hill country. And it was a pretty cool ride. It was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous for about the first 20 miles. And then this cold front hit, and this was like Texas blue norther. The streets started icing up. But we're already out so far, and a bunch of us think that we're closer than we are, and we're not. We're way the hell out there, you know. And we brought long, cold weather gear, and so we're putting some stuff on, and we start to ride. We just keep riding. And by the end of the deal, we got about 15 miles to go. We stop up in Fredericksburg. We got 15, 20 miles to go back home, and we've done 80 miles. And I mean, this is a death ride, folks. They're dropping back here, and we didn't prep for this. We prepped for a 100-mile ride, not in a blizzard. And people are dropping we leave a bunch of people at the store, and there's 6 of us that look at each other in the eye and says, listen, we've gone this far, we're going to go the rest of the way. And everything in me says, no, don't do it. And there was this little girl that says, yeah, I'm in, I'm going to go. And I couldn't say, I had to go. I mean, I'm sober, but I still have to keep face, don't you know who I am? Anyway, we rode, and I'm going to tell you guys, even the trained cyclists that were much more competitive than me were hurting on this ride. And all 6 of us rode into the parking lot together. And all of these guys, I do it every time I tell this stupid story. It's a bicycle ride, for Christ's sake. The guys that had lights were guiding the ones that didn't. And the heavy guys, the guys that could pull, that had the muscles, that were in front of us pulling this little guys, and we're dying out there, and everybody's helping every way they can. And those of us that don't have it left in us, they're back behind us, literally pushing us up these hills so that we can get home. And it's like we pull into this parking lot, and everybody's so excited, and we go inside and we pee, and Y'all think we all do it on the bicycles. We don't. We pee, and we all sat in the little whirlpool, and we kick back, and there's 6 of us, and we're all sitting there, and we're not talking. We just got this little stupid grins on our face, and we're sitting there smiling at each other, and we all got up and said, thank you, thank you, thank you, and we just got up and we left. And that was years ago, guys, and we still see these 6 people out there, and some of us are riding and some of us are not riding anymore. But we're tied together because of that journey, not because we were all cyclists, but because we all went through this experience together. Well, I don't know where that came from. I was talking to Larry earlier. I buried 4 people this month. 4 good people. Alcoholism, drugs, the ravages of. 2 of them died sober, 2 of them died drunk. Good eggs. I come into this room and I look around and I see some of you guys that I have known for years standing in the trench, taking shots from idiots, scathing emails. Got an email from a sister of mine over in the hills and stood up at a group conscience and tried to explain the singleness of purpose that we have in our fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And some old lady, sober 15 years, took a cheap shot at her. And this little girl, a few years sober, stood her ground. She said, I didn't write the traditions, but I'm going to stay here and guard them. Boy, what cojones. The cats in this room that have gone into groups and changed their formats and says, I know that the open discussion has been here for 20 years, but we're not getting a success rate like we should. We're going to change the formats, and we're going to study the literature, and we're going to talk about God and the steps, and we're going to work people through quick. We're going to start standing for something in the trench. All of this to say, folks, with real tears in my eyes, you cats that have gotten sober and stayed sober and understood that this is not about one stupid day at a time, and that you can get sober anytime, that you stayed through the good times and the bad times, I want to tell you thank you. I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, you guys that have led the way and stayed sober so that this fellowship could survive. Because it's tough out there. I got to tell you, it's better now than it's ever been. 10 years ago, you couldn't have given a talk like this. 8 years down, more and more of us out there feeling the power of God. But it takes cojones, it takes effort to actually get in the trench. To sit on the sidelines, it doesn't take much, because when it starts to get a little hot, you can just pick up and leave. Take everybody's inventory. Oh, my mistake. No big deal. But again, it's just like in any kind of relationship. There with the kids, thick and thin, good and bad. You commit, you stick. And a bunch of you are in here, and a bunch of you have taken shots, and I'm going to tell you, for every single one of you that have done it, thank you. Especially the women, you old geezers, you young people. I've ended 1,000 talks like this, and I'm telling you point blank. I work at probably one of the nicest treatment centers in the country, and our success rate is good for those that walk out and get connected spiritually in the 12 steps. Those that walk off that campus and don't get connected, don't stay sober, because treatment centers will not get you sober. They will get you dry. They will give you the ammunition you need, but if you don't get in a group full of people that will help you learn how to use it, you ain't going to stay sober, folks. The insanity will return, and your head will say, it's time to go get some pills or a little pot, and you'll be loaded in a heartbeat. For you guys that have stuck in the trenches, buddy, thanks forever. And if I can ever do anything to help you, buddy, I'm going to be there. Thanks for having me.
clothed in majesty. Let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. Just your voice, name above all names.